What's going on, everybody? JR from JrZCarZ, and today I'm going to show you how to change the rear brake pads and rotors on this 2017 Honda Civic. This one has an electronic parking brake, so you have to make sure that you're doing it in a specific way, otherwise you could damage the unit in the back there. So stick around and I'll show you how to get it done. Okay, so that in the middle of the screen right there is the servo for the electronic parking brake. That's going to come off with the caliper itself. So when we take the caliper off, and as you can see by the way these rotors look, they definitely need to be replaced. So we'll take this caliper off. I'll show you what the servo looks like, because that has to come off in order for you to spin the gear that's in it to fully retract it, and then that way you can compress the caliper and get everything set. So first thing I like to do is I like to put some penetrating oil inside each one of the lug studs here, just to see if it'll get behind it. If there's anything that's if there's rust behind it, it'll free it up a little bit and get this rotor a little bit easier to come off. First thing you want to do is you want to get this spring out of here, right? So you can just get a screwdriver behind it, pop that off. Get this out of the way. So to take the caliper off, we're going to have to remove this pin here. There's a cap on the end. We're going to remove that. And then if you look inside right here, that's where we took the cap off. That's going to be a T45 torque spit. These are great. That'll break it right free. We'll get it in there and spin these off. Now the bottom one was easy because there's plenty of room over here to swing. The top one's going to be a little more difficult because you have the hose right here in the way. So what I found is easiest is to get one of these with the little snub 3/8 extension here, and that fits right in and gives you enough room to where you can move it around the hose and you're not going to be hitting the shock here. So this is the way that you're going to want to do the top one. So these pins are not going to come all the way out when you unscrew them. So you can see there that it's still just a little bit in the caliper here. So you want to take a screwdriver and just push them a little bit back so you can clear that caliper and pull this right out. And now that you have those pins out, caliper will come right out. You want to be extra careful because you do have electronics back here too. So don't pull it too far. We're going to pull this clip back here and pop that loose. So that way, that electrical connector to the brake servo, the electronic brake servo here, gets disconnected, and then we have a little bit more movement of the caliper. So you can see here, this is the servo, this is the electronic connector. You want to pop this clip out and then pop the electrical cable off so you have a little bit more room to get this out of the way. All right, so here you can see the back side of the servo, and there's two 5mm Allen screws that you have to take off. There's one here, there's one here. So take those off. All right, now that those two are off, this should pop right off. Just give it a little wiggle. And that's what the inside looks like. You can see there's starred teeth in there. It's starred and it meets up with this here. All right, so that's your electronic parking brake. We'll put that off to the side. Now this is what we need to turn. All right, so what you want to do is you want to get a 9mm. I'm doing this with a 1/4-inch ratchet just because it's a little difficult to spin. It shouldn't give you any force, right? You're going to want to turn this clockwise to pull this back in. If you see your piston moving out, you're pushing it the wrong way, go the other way, right? So let's do that. See, we don't see the piston moving. So we're going to do this very lightly until you feel it stop. You don't want to put any other pressure on it. As soon as you feel it stop, you're good to go. And now that that's done, I'm just going to take a regular old C-clamp. I'm going to put it on there. You don't want to put it on here. You want to put it on the face of this, and then just compress your caliper, just like any other car. Going slow. Until it bottoms out. Again, no heavy pressure, just until it stops. And now, you're going to put your e-brake servo back on, right? You're going to mesh everything back up, put the e-brake servo back on. All right, so now that the servo's back on, now it's time to get that rotor off. All right, so here's where you're really going to have a problem. These stupid Phillips head screws that are in the rotors to keep them in place. What you want to do is get the widest Phillips head point that you can get it in there, hammer it in there so you can get it all the way down in as far as you can. Then you're going to want to heat this up a little bit, right, with a propane torch, and then hit it, hopefully, with an impact to see if it'll come loose. A lot of times they don't come loose. You got to drill the head out and then just take the rotor off and then spin it off from there, but we're going to give that a shot. So this is one thing you need to do. The other thing you need to do are these bolts here, this one here and that one down there. They're both 17 millimeters. And that's going to take this bracket off. And then when you have that off and this crap, the rotor will pop off. You might have to use a little force to get it off because there may be some rust behind this, but then you'll put everything back on and then you'll be good to go. So like I said, with a little bit of heat and some persuasion from an impact, it did come right out. Took a little bit, but it did come out eventually. And this is complete junk. Now what I like to do is I like to take a wire wheel and I like to clean up the mating surface of the hub here just to make sure that this is as true as possible. And then before I go and put the new rotor on, I'll drop a little bit of anti-seize around it just to prevent it from sticking, especially around the center of the hub here where the rotor will touch it. All right, so for pads and rotors, we went with the Power Stop Evolutions. Those are your part numbers for the backs. Amazon sells an entire kit front and back. These are coated rotors, so if you live anywhere in the Northeast or anywhere where you get rust or salt or anything like that, getting coated rotors is your best option to keep them from rusting out. And just like with the hub assembly, before I go and I put this screw back in the rotor, I'm going to put a little anti-seize on it just to prevent that from sticking in that hub assembly and the rotor again, in case, you know, in the future we need to do another brake job on this car. All right, so we got our bracket back on. It's all tight. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that any of these surfaces here that touch the pads, they're free of rust. You clear, you know, take out any loose particles of rust, clean them down, and then when you go to put the pads back in, you're going to put the lubricant that you have, the brake pad lubricant, on the pad and on this surface here, so that way they slide nice and free. And just like with the anti-seize, a little dab will do you. You don't want to lube it up like you're going to have some naughty time with it. All right, pads are back in. You want to make sure that the rear pad is the one with the spring on it. Now what you want to do is you want to take those guide pins that you had out, you want to clean them up, give them a little bit of lube on there too, and then we're going to put that caliper back on. But before you do that, you want to make sure that you put the electrical connector back on the e-brake servo, because it's going to be a little bit tight in there, and it's easier to do it now than it is when the caliper's back on. And of course, don't forget to put your spring back on the caliper too. I'm going to do the other rear side, and then I have the front ones to do on this too. I'm not going to show that on camera because it's the same as any other front disc rotor replacement, and I have a bunch of videos on that. If you want, I can link them down below here too in the description. But after these are all done, you got to take them out, you got to bed in the brakes so you have your braking procedure, and then you should be able to stop again without hearing that grinding. And that's all there is to it. So if this helped you out, do me a favor, smash that like button, drop your comments down below, and share it with your friends. I hope everybody's staying safe. I'll see you in the next video.